All right, welcome you guys. It's week 2. This is Editing for the Web. Emily Ray on the mic, your instructor for this class. So excited to have you back for another week. We kind of are wrapping up what we had referred to as the discovery phase of the web design and development process, where you did a lot of information gathering and research on your fictitious website scenario for your client Real Deal Tacos. So over the weekend, you guys put together a proposal in the form of a presentation that contained a couple of different elements, including specific recommendations, sitemap, and wireframe schematic to present your idea. This is basically your pitch to the client to say, look, I hear what you need. I've done research. I know who your target audience is, and these are my ideas and my suggestions about how to build a site that meets your business needs and also the needs of your users. So I wanted to just do a quick kind of review with you guys, kind of taking a look at the work that was submitted. I'm very excited about the quality. Did you guys have any reflection about the experience, any questions about any part in particular about putting together that proposal and kind of how to articulate your ideas for your client?
I just like kind of confused at the last slide. The I forget the title, but it was
Implementation plan.
yeah. I was a little bit like
Yeah.
confused about
Okay.
that. Like, what should like what is this problems like look for, or what is this questions like real means? Like,
Okay.
I just like confused about that.
Sure. So an implementation plan is kind of like, how do you get from here to there? How do we go from this strategy part where I'm giving you my ideas to now moving forward into this next phase? If you are putting together a real proposal for your client, you want to give them that bridge so they know what to do next, right? So let's say you've given this presentation and your ideas and strategy to the folks at Real Deal, and they're like, absolutely, we want to sign up with you. What do we do next? And so your implementation plan is kind of the highlights as to these are the next steps. These are like where we go to from here. Kind of depending upon whatever strategy you included, it might say things like the next step is for us to meet and I need more information about X, or the next step would be for you to send me this particular content that I still need, or the next step would be to set up an account with this particular CMS that you wanted to do and choose a template. The next step would then be for me to design a series of design tools or documents, maybe in the form of a mood board or a style sheet, just to get sure, on the same page, making sure that, our visual, tastes are aligned with your brand. So kind of the next steps would be based on whatever specifically you proposed. Kind of what I do with my kind of real world clients is I would say, okay, if this sounds good, what we need to do from here is set up an account with this particular place. If you don't have a domain name, that's something I need for you to be thinking about, but don't purchase one on your own. Usually it's something that you can do as part of a subscription service with the CMS. Also, I'll need one half of the deposit amount or one half the estimated cost of this site to get started. I'll need for you to send me any remaining content or assets that you haven't yet gathered. Also, I'll need a credit card to put on file so that we can get you set up with this service. Different things like that. Just depends on the particulars of what you proposed, and like really it's for them and for you to know what's needed to go from here to there. But that's a great question. Stephanie, would you mind asking the question that you had a little bit earlier, just so that we can address it here and get that answer out for the larger audience?
Yes, my question was in concerns about budget, because the proposal very specifically in the rules and guidelines that you provided states that a proposal isn't truly about the financial aspect, but more about the planning out and how it's going to look. My question was, is it appropriate to add if that I am saying because our client is trying to save but is low on budget and is trying to save a little bit of money, is it appropriate to ask and add that they are saving money by using a website such as Weebly, which is my personal choice for this assignment, instead of going through a more traditional route and investing in a website that is constructed from zero.
Like
Because they're
custom
saving-
development.
Yeah, because they're
Yes.
saving on.
So you're basically, just to kind of paraphrase back to you to make sure I'm getting the question right, you're asking, is it appropriate to say, hey client, you're saving money by operating with a CMS, a content management system, rather than hiring a custom, development for your site? And the answer is yes, but you don't want to do it in such a way that kind of makes it sound like you're cutting corners or you're selling them short in any way, because that's absolutely not the case. In fact, most sites today are, unless you're a giant corporation, don't have custom development anymore. It will take me less than 10 minutes to construct a basic site on a content management system with what used to take me weeks to develop, in a custom format. And so what we talked about earlier when you asked this question was that they're saving money on the custom development side of things, but where that time and where the money is going, it's not that like, oh, lickety split. I can definitely launch a 5-page website in a matter of minutes with a content management system, but it's the handling and the strategic development of that content that then is where the time is spent. Where you're applying best practices for putting text and images and rich media together in a way that best facilitates the experience for the target audience of this particular business. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes
Okay.
perfect sense.
Perfect. Any other sort of reflections about your process or questions? Did you find it difficult at all to create the narrated slideshow?
No, not this time.
Okay.
No. In all honesty, because I started writing it all out
Mhm.
as a document,
Mm-hmm.
it was very easy to me to transfer the information because it was already. I was basically putting the document in a presentation
Uh-huh.
and just going through the information
Mhm.
without oversaturating the presentation.
So I love what you said there is that it started out with a document, and what you're going to find is that most things in the media world are easier when you're starting with your ideas articulated and written out ahead of time, because then you know how to translate those ideas visually in a much richer way instead of just kind of starting out with the visuals. Start out with the words and then see what kind of visuals are needed to support whatever it is that you're trying to say. Movies start out with a script, right? And then they go to a storyboard, and then they are, shot and put together. So I'm very happy to hear that that was your process as well with this. It very closely mirrors these other media creation activities for sure. I'm going to pause what I'm saying really quick and ask Haley if you want to jump on the mic, and is there anything that you want to offer about your experience doing this?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Mine wasn't so much starting from the document. I kind of had an idea, and I didn't want it to be just so, like, black and white on the screen, just words.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to, like, show stuff. So that's why I chose that Glogster
Uh-huh.
site, because it was, like, an interactive poster.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't get it to work correctly. So I'm not quite sure where to go from there.
Yeah, Glockster is a cool tool. Maybe you can demo it for us at a later point in the lecture. But it's a kind of an interesting presentation tool as well. But as always, anytime you're kind of experimenting with new technologies, there is a learning curve of how to navigate the user interface, or how to best present or export the work and display it in certain mediums. So definitely it's cool to experiment with those things because you might produce kind of a more interactive or visually engaging result. But there definitely is a learning curve and sort of some troubleshooting of different technology issues that goes in on the front side of those things. I'll pull yours up as we move through, and we'll take a look at what kind of each of you put together a little bit later on in the lecture. Did you have any questions, Haley, about any of it, or any other reflection points that you wanted to add before we push forward?
No, I know I did. I guess I left quite a bit of stuff out of mine after looking at fellow classmates' presentations, but I'm hoping that I can, get it all situated as I go forward. So.
All right, sounds good.
I think I'm pretty good.
Okay, cool. So this actually is the first month that I've had you guys put this together in the form of a presentation. So all of those elements were there before, but this month is the first month where I've asked you to put it together in such a way like you could hand it over to a client, as this little package that is a complete articulation of your strategy moving forward. And so I was very curious to hear about your process, whether or not you felt like it was difficult to do the narrated slides and all of that. Previously, in previous months when I've held this class, I've just had you write your proposal on your blog, include the site map, and also include the wireframe image in there. And so in previous classes, these were the things that I would see as kind of missing or needing further contextualization in this assignment. So although I have not had a chance to thoroughly review, I've looked at everything everyone has submitted, but not at the point where I can provide feedback to you. But things that I saw in this assignment in the past is not enough of an explanation as to why you are recommending certain things. So I would see students who would say, we definitely need to use social media, and then that's where the statement would stop. Anytime you have a recommendation, you want to follow it up with a because, right? Because what you're doing is you're selling your client on the value of this idea that you have, and that you are credible in such a way to be able to help them get there. The next thing that I would see is not enough of a clear definition of the scope of the project, kind of open-ended. We're going to need to get some more images. All right, well, where and how? And your proposal should not raise questions. Your client shouldn't say, oh, I have a question about this. It should answer the questions. So if you're saying, I propose that we use more images, follow up with that statement with saying, and we will use stock imagery from this place, or we will use the photos that you've taken here, or we will arrange for a photographer to do this. In the past, I've seen disconnects between the proposal, the sitemap, and the wireframe. Areas that would contradict one another. So maybe the proposal says, oh, we should have, a one-page website that, has these sections. But then the sitemap shows a 5-page website. And the wireframe just shows the, a navigation system for a 3-page website. So really, the proposal, the sitemap, and the wireframe should support each other. If your proposal says, I think that a 5-page website is the way to go, and it should be home, services, about, locations, and a contact us, then all of that same information should be reflected in your sitemap and your wireframe. Because I had this different submission format this time, I didn't see these bottom 2 issues at all, but in the past I would see students post a proposal on their blog as the download of a Word document, right? And so what you've done there is you've actually given your user an extra step to get that information. A web page or a blog can support text, images, and interactive media. Why would you make me take the additional step to download a document to get what you can just show me right there on that particular page, right? And so again, just a user experience consideration. Why make somebody work a little bit harder to get the information that they need to support them on their mission to get the information? And another thing that I would see is the posting of large graphics with text. In the past, I've seen people screenshot a Pages document because they like the formatting that they were able to do with Pages, but couldn't replicate the same thing online, but wanted to do it in such a way that it carried over that visual aesthetic. Well, you guys learned last week about the potential downfalls of doing such a thing. Now, Stephanie, you also submitted your proposal in the form of a Pages document, an additional thing. And so, I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that that's a bad idea, right? So I will definitely take a look at that document that you have submitted. Because if you think about this in a real world application.
She's the best teacher ever.
Thank you.
So yeah, I paid him to come in and say that. He's actually a brilliant guy who works at another part of Full Sail here, and we do a lot of collaborations together in this room. Actually, that's how I found out about this as a potential meeting spot for us. But so if we're thinking about how does this really work, like this is a fictitious client and you are submitting this for a school project, and I'm having you submit it on your blog so I can make certain points about the way that you share information, for who and why. But let's say that you really were working with a client. How would you get this proposal to them? You're not going to post it on your blog, right? And say, hey, go take a look at my blog for the proposal for this project. Okay, I'm glad that you guys are able to extrapolate that that's not how it would happen in the real world, that we are making certain considerations for this fictitious exercise. But in the real world, maybe it would take the form of you could put all this information in the body of an email, right? Or maybe you want to make it a little bit more visually impactful and you have a template of some kind that you like to use, that you've already taken the care and time to have visually styled and contain a certain amount of this information on the front end to make it easier for you to pump out these proposals. And certainly like a Pages document that had then been turned into a PDF for easy online viewing. Because you need to be thinking about, too, your client may or may not have the software that you created this proposal in. And so let's say you send me a Pages document, but I'm a PC user. Then I might not have Pages, and then I can't read what you've given me. But things like Pages or Word or Google Doc can all export to a PDF, which is a universal file format, which you can open across platforms, and that's a very easily viewable file format. So just thinking about how that might happen in the real world. Yes, Stephanie?
Would you consider, based on your experience, that clients prefer to have a proposal presented to them in the form of a document or of a presentation?
It depends. In my experience, every situation is going to be different. If it's somebody who knows you very well and knows your work, maybe they've come to you from a word of mouth recommendation. Usually a document is fine, right? But let's say it's a total stranger who has contracted you or who has expressed interest in hiring you, then there might be a little bit of a need for a sell, right? To demonstrate your credibility in the area or your knowledge on the subject, or just that you are capable of doing the work that you're saying that you can do.
Okay.
It's really specific, right? So in my personal experience, because I don't do this, I don't make sites for my bread and butter anymore, right? Like I don't need it to keep the lights on or to feed the baby at home. I don't have kids. I mean my dog. Because I don't need it as that kind of income, I don't market myself, I don't advertise and say, I'll make websites, and therefore the people that come to me are usually coming on a word of mouth basis now. So it's a referral from somebody else that I've worked with who said, oh, I have a girl. I have someone who can do this, who's reliable and good and all of this. So in my experience right now, when I am working with people, they usually already know me either personally or one-off. And it's like when they come to me, they already want to work with me. And so for me, my proposal process is such where I am generating all of the similar information that you just saw, but usually sending it back in the form of an email.
Mm-hmm.
I always, I mean, like, because this is a business, there's a business aspect for me on this too. Of course, there's the whole pricing and time estimate stuff included. I didn't require that for you guys as an element of this project because it really stumped students in the past for this fake exercise. They're like, it's going to take me 6 months to build this. I'm like, actually, you're going to build it in 2 weeks. So, like, if you estimate that it's going to take you 6 months, that's not really accurate. And you're like, I don't know how much to charge. Well, I want you guys.
That is something like yesterday I saw the example proposal. I don't know, like, how you came with that figure. Like,
How did I come with that figure? Because that's what I charge.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. How you came up with that figure for yourself as well?
Well, I came up with that figure because number one, I've done research on similar fees for similar services. I also take a look at what is the value of my time, right? Like, how much do I get paid for the job that I do here? How much do I get paid for the jobs that I do elsewhere? And making sure that something that I engage in is at a price point that is worth my time. So let's say I got paid X number of dollars an hour for teaching, and I was trying to make a choice between should I take another section of teaching and get paid that, or should I do freelance stuff, right? So unless the freelance stuff pays me as much as the teaching stuff, then it's not worth my time. Right. So I have to make sure that what I'm engaging in is a worthwhile pursuit in that regard. Mm-hmm. There are always considerations too, though, when you guys are first starting out, because what you charge is based on your skill level and what you're able to produce. When I first started out, I did a lot of stuff for free. I did a lot of stuff for friends. I sought out kind of pro bono experiences just to build a portfolio of work. And as your skills grow, generally your fees grow, and they grow because you want to weed out certain projects that may or may not best align with the type of work you want to do, right? Any more questions about kind of the proposal process or, what that might look like with a real client? My hope is, and I've seen this happen with students in this class, so it's my hope for you, but it's been a real possibility and a real thing that has happened for future students, is that when you get done with this class, you will have the skill set and the agency. Agency means like the wherewithal to know that you can do it, the self-confidence, confidence in your ability, to know that you can handle a project like this from start to finish, that you could engage a client in a conversation about what their website needs are, and that you could put together a proposal and feel confident in your messaging and feel confident in the communication process and the next step and leading them down the path from idea through execution and through like design development and ultimately launching their site and get paid for that work, right? I had a student who was in this class right before spring break last year. Real smart, and went off on spring break and then came back and was in my portfolio class right after spring break. And he shows up and he's like, Emily, I'm so excited. You're not going to believe what I did over spring break. And I'm like, what is it? Like party pics from Daytona? Or he's like, no, I went to Atlanta and I met this lady who needed a website for her jewelry making business. And so I built her an e-commerce site while I was up there and launched the site, and she paid me for it. Like on his spring break, an e-commerce, like selling jewelry site.
Yes, that's another question. E-commerce site, like whatever, like I generally, anyone is talking, like my dad has a business as well, so he wanted to have like an e-commerce site. So he talked to people, they were like, oh, it is a lot of maintenance and it's gonna cost you so much. It's gonna cost you at least $1,500 to $2,000 a month every month to manage that site and everything, and you need a lot of data inventory and everything. And
Good program.
Yes, all right. So what you're describing, like the needs of an e-commerce site, what you're saying is absolutely right, but it is absolutely changing in the same exact way that there are tools in place now that have simplified this process and made it easy for small business owners to have an e-commerce component on their site. So content management systems like Wix or Weebly or Squarespace now have these plugins
E-commerce?
that will allow you to sell products or have paid for downloads that attach to a PayPal account, or that attach to a Stripe account so that you can accept credit card payments. And so what used to be a very expensive endeavor for managing products and the database of the products and the shipping and whatever the case may be with your particular sale has now been simplified to the point that a small business owner can, with a certain amount of motivation and time spent on these tools, can do it themselves for relatively nothing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that. to
Yes,
my dad.
it has changed in a very, very big and considerable way. And so, this kind of wraps up what we've done here with the planning phase for building this site. At this point, I want you guys to assume that your client has accepted your proposal, and for you to move forward this week in the design and development of it, based upon what you had strategized, right? So it is your responsibility now to produce the site that you proposed. Now, as you move through and are learning more this week about different types of web design and development ideas, techniques, strategies, all of the above, you might look back on what you created over the weekend or last week and think, well, that's actually not feasible for the time frame that I have. That's okay. At any point, you can kind of modify your plan or your design based upon what you're learning. That's definitely okay. Let's say you propose that it would be a great idea to have a live video feed from the truck that comes in, to the site. That's something, if this was a real world scenario, that would be something that we could, maybe figure out. It might take more than 2 weeks. It would, take a lot of coordination and equipment and all kinds of things. But it's possible. But since this truck doesn't really exist, the idea of getting a live feed of where it is, it's just not going to happen. So if you want, here are some options. Revise your proposal or your ideas so that, whatever value or benefit you saw from that, you've addressed in a different way on the site. Or mock it up, right? Mock it up what it would look like if it was to be fully functional, right? So those are just some options for you as you move forward and are growing and learning and seeing the capabilities of what you can do in these building platforms. All right, we're going to move into more of like the lecture part of today. So we're going to talk a little bit about content development strategies, approaching how we develop content for the web. I talked to you last week about really the 7 most important considerations, but we're going to hammer home a few of those things today, and then talk about a few steps and activities that you could do in the design phase to help make sure you're on the same page with your client as to the visual aspects and renderings of the site. But just like last time, I like to start with a vague, sort of question just to open up the discussion. What did you guys do online today? We're going to start with Haley, if you're available on your mic.
I pretty much worked all day online.
Okay, doing what?
I'm working on a digital magazine.
Okay, so like,
I'm creating the content.
okay, like an InDesign or what?
No, actually, I export it out of InDesign. It's put together in InDesign, but I create everything in Photoshop.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, and so what are you doing for an online aspect of that? Uploading it to like a web-based platform, or?
Yeah, I was in and out of Dropbox all day.
Okay.
Conversing with the clients.
Okay, so
online.
file sharing and emailing and all that good stuff. All right, so how about you, Canuck?
Okay, don't laugh, but then I started my day watching the first episode of Apprentice UK. I love that show. I love the way people pitch and project management and everything.
Uh-huh.
Then I'm actually doing this 100 Happy Day challenge online on Instagram. So I posted that, like a picture of this one YouTuber who's actually coming for IZF Fest. Yes, a thing for everyone. This IZF Fest is happening in Orlando. So it's like a networking event for all the social media creators and everyone. For Full Sail people, it's for free.
Where is it?
Yes, it's happening at Kissimmee.
Ooh, when?
I just got my ticket. I think it's on 10th of February.
Can you please post that information in our Facebook group?
Yes, I will because it's for free. I think a $200 ticket is just for free for you guys.
Yes,
You can
Wow.
absolutely post that in our Facebook group. And Haley, are you connected to the Facebook group?
Sorry, no, I'm not.
Okay.
How do I do that?
It's a closed Facebook group, so just search on there search on there MCBS at Full Sail, and you request to join, and someone will approve your request. And that's just, we kind of share local things that are going on, and since you're close in Plant City, it would be great for you to be connected.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thanks.
Awesome. All right. So thank you for that.
And then finally, I was just tweeting, like, oh, Monday motivation, Monday man crush, music Monday.
Got
That's
it.
all.
All right. How about you, Stephanie?
I was in social media this morning.
Social media?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Min?
I just checked our room like library room
Yes.
in Fessel, and I checked, do we have homework today? Today?
Yeah.
I scrolled down it. Yes, we don't have homework.
Yes.
Yes.
No homework due today. All right. So the point in me asking that is just to kind of highlight the diversity of what people do every day in this online medium, right? So reading news, streaming music, shopping, booking vacations, getting info, in a number of different on a number of different topics in a number of different ways. So all of these things, everything that you guys described, can be broadly categorized into three main pursuits, right? So people are kind of engaging with the web to satisfy goals, to complete tasks, or to answer questions in some form or another. So anything that we just talked about can, fall into one of these categories, or they could overlap in different ways. So, for example, posting on your social media, you have a goal with that, right? So, like, you are doing that. And for Haley and the work that she's doing, she's completing work-related tasks. And for Min, she was asking, do we have homework today, right? So she's researching and getting questions. And so when we kind of know what people are doing online, we develop content to address these three things. You need to make sure that your content does one of these three things online. So if a user has questions about something, your site should have the answers. If a user needs to satisfy a goal, your site should help them satisfy that goal. If your user needs to complete a task, maybe your site is meant to help them complete that task. So, because we know this about user behavior online, web content must anticipate what the user needs and support them in their mission, right? So let's think about it. Let's kind of go back to the Real Deal Taco examples. And what does the Real Deal Taco site user need?
They kind of needed like a good, what I felt like from like reading about it, they needed some kind of content because they wanted more of like their like search, and they wanted to focus more on SEO. So they needed like more content, and basically what they wanted is like to spread the word in the market.
That's what the business wants. What does the ideal visitor to the Real Deal Taco site, why are they there?
To find out their location.
To find out
what
their
they-
location
they offer.
and what they offer.
Their menus.
And their menus, right?
Mhm.
I feel like Those are really the two biggest things that someone would come to the Real Deal Tacos site for. The business would create it to be able to share content and to have a presence and to promote their brand. But the users of the site needed to find out, number one, hey, where is this truck located today? And number two, like, what am I interested in getting today, right? So like when we think about, okay, this is what these people are coming for, how do we support them in our design? How do we support their mission to find out where the truck is? What's the number one thing we can do?
Post schedule
Okay, post a schedule.
and send us what's that called? Small boxes. Social media things like Facebook.
Okay, so like you.
The
I think
plugins.
so. Yeah.
Mhm.
We can find that in some website
Oh,
that
okay, the
shows
plugins.
like
Yeah.
plugins.
Okay, so you want to include social media plugins, maybe.
Yeah, right.
All right. So yeah, absolutely. There's different ways. There's different ways to do it. The point that I'm trying to hammer home here is that if we know they want locations and food, don't hide that information on the site. If that's the most important bit of information that someone wants, make it easily and readily available to them, right? All right. So this requires us to know our audience, right? If we want to support them, we need to know why do they come to our sites. Right, so let's extrapolate a little bit more. You guys are MCBS students who are going to eventually be creating your own portfolio sites. And there are people who are going to come to that site. Why are people going to come to that site?
To find out what we can do.
What you can do, right? What you can do. So then it would be important for you to do what?
Share what we can do.
Okay, share what you can do, right? So rather than just just post a bio and a really cute picture of yourself and your phone number, I mean, having something that demonstrates your skill set in a particular area and your ability to articulate and contextualize that thing that they're seeing and make sure that that person knows what skills you're trying to highlight with sharing that particular piece would be an important thing to do. All right. Another broad question. How do people read online?
Just the points.
Just the points.
I love reading, but whenever there's something online, I'll just see, 5 ways to market as first, second, third, fourth,
True.
fifth, done.
Right? So you're just looking for the key points.
And if it's too long, I'll read the comment.
And if you're too long,
It's really
All right, so I mean, you guys are really you are answering the question in the same vein that it was intended. Because here's the thing: people don't read online; they just mostly scan the information, right? Because they're looking for these quick bits of something. Because it's a very task-oriented, very like goal-driven environment. You're not just sitting there like you do with a book, and you intend to flip through every page and absorb the story and everything that goes on there. You are multitasking. You probably got 20 tabs open and you are on a mission, right? So you're not reading everything on the page. If we know this about our users, then we should do what?
Make the content more small and just to the point.
Okay, so you're saying chunk it and make it concise.
Simple. Good to see.
Clean.
Like
Ah.
first glance.
If only everybody would do that. So here you go. Because of this, web content must be concise, streamlined, it's scannable, timely and relevant. So, as best you can, making it relevant to whatever conversation or whatever the point is for posting that, and objective in such a way that makes your content more credible. Okay, so there is a researcher by the name of Jacob Nielsen who's a usability expert and is cited heavily in user experience and usability studies. And one of the things that he found from his research is that given the average time that users spend on any given web page, they have time to read at most 28% of the words on the screen, but 20% is more likely. 20%. So let's just break this down. Given the amount of time that they have tracked, people, eye tracking studies where they have a map on the eyes to see where the eyes goes. Based upon these studies, and the time that users are spending looking at something, they can absorb 20% of what's on the page. So 80% of what's on the page is getting unnoticed, right? So again, these are all just considerations for you in developing that content. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at this, but the owners of the Real Deal Taco Truck have provided you a lot of rich detail about their story, right? What about that do you think is important to include for users on the site?
I mean, I would rather just include the history, like how they started,
Mm-hmm.
and their cooking philosophy, like what
Mhm.
exactly they're specialized in.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly they would want to know.
Mm-hmm. Let's say, I'm blanketly going to say, as the web strategist on these particular projects, you have creative license to decide what you want to put up there. I'm going to assume that you've already worked that out with the business owner in particular, but for the sake of this discussion, right? For the sake of this discussion, what if the business owner was like, that story is important, and I want that whole story reflected on the website somehow? How would you address that?
I would address it in different, like, picture here, a little piece of
Mhm.
story, and then another picture and
Mhm.
another piece of their story, and
Mhm.
just divide it up.
Okay.
Is it necessary to come in the about section? Because I thought like maybe I would ask them to like do a small video of like they talking about just the brand.
Sure, that's absolutely something that you can do. Do you think you have time to do that by Sunday when you turn the site in?
Mhm.
Then do it.
Okay.
That's your strategy. Do it. Right. So here,
I need to
you're
go
not.
with small
Good job.
pieces.
Yeah,
You made work.
you
made work, extra work.
You can make it up. But here's the opportunity for you guys in doing this, right? You are flexing muscles in the area that are important to your particular interests, right? So like if Kanak wants to spend extra time developing a video content asset, her time will not be wasted because she has an interest in this area and she's practicing a skill set. She's also creating content strategically for this interactive environment. So she's basically, killing two birds with one stone in that regard. If Stephanie wants to, because she's got a strong interest in visual design and she hates the poor photography that was provided and decides that what she wants to do is go out and make cool graphics for all the food instead, then she has an opportunity. Then she has an opportunity in this project to create more content that's visually appealing and that will enhance the experience of users on this particular site. It's not a requirement of anything for you guys. It's not a requirement at all. But it's an opportunity, right? That is sort of the gift of this fictitious exercise, is that you've got all of the content. You have everything that you need to build this site, and nothing is required of you beyond taking the plug and play assets, using your strategic ideas about how to place these in the most effective way for your intended audience, right? It's almost just like a puzzle that you're all going to put together in a slightly different way, right, to address the needs. But if you want to use it as an opportunity to practice whatever it is that you want to practice in your content development tool belt, do it. Because you're potentially creating a portfolio piece here. This could be a portfolio piece. This could be something at the end of this class that you could point to and say, hey, potential client, check out this website that I made. I could do something like this for you at $20 an hour, or whatever it is that you deem would be your fee for such a thing. All right, moving forward, this guy Jacob Nielsen did these eye tracking studies, and what he found from watching people's eye movement on a page is that users tend to scan information in an F-shaped pattern on the page. So most attention being spent in kind of like the top first paragraph or two. In English, we read from left to right, so you'll notice that there's a heavier concentration on the left-hand side, and then it kind of trails off there toward the right. But what you can see is that as a user is absorbing this information and perhaps not finding exactly what they want, they start to do this vertical scan on the page, right? And at times I call it a vertical plummet, because if we're looking for something, our eyes are just going down the page until we find something that tells us to pause, or keep going, right? And you can see the heavy concentrations at the top from left to right, and then you start that kind of scan down the page because you are task oriented, satisfying a goal, trying to do something, and looking for that one piece of information for why you're actually on that site. So what does this tell us? If we know that this is the way people absorb, if people absorb information in an F shape on the page as content development experts, professionals, budding professionals maybe, what should we do?
I think the most important spot on our website is, as a consequence, the top left corner.
Yes. Is it any coincidence then that that's generally where most branding information is, that navigation kind of starts over there and goes left to right, because that's where our eyes are trained to go. If we know that people absorb information in an F-shaped pattern, why not make sure that our content is laid out as best we can in an F-shaped pattern? And how do we do that? We make sure that the most important information is contained in the top couple of paragraphs, and that we then separate dense paragraph text and kind of separate it out by using information-rich keywords in the form of headings and subheadings, and then bulleted lists, so that people can easily scan it, right? So you guys remember that 7 Deadly Sins lecture when I said, please avoid super dense paragraphs of text, and I showed you what one of your FSO assignments looked like when I did not apply any type of formatting to it, when I just gave it to you in one big chunk, versus what that same activity looked like when there were headings, subheadings, and bulleted lists. It's the same kind of idea here. All right. We keep talking about the web as this interactive medium. And basically, what that means is that we are constantly making choices about how and where to spend our time and navigating and interacting with this technology. It's not just like we're sitting back and watching it. And so because it is a different kind of medium, I'd like to just muse for a minute about, like, how is it different? How does it say differ from like a print medium? And let's talk about some of those differences. Web is a digital environment. Traditional print is an analog environment. Can someone kind of talk about those differences a little bit? What maybe does that mean? How to highlight the differences between those things.
I'm not sure what analog is.
I don't know. I am getting all that engineering terminology. Analog is the just like straight line, like the way you have analog signals and digital signals. Digital signals go like in a waveform, and analog just goes like just
Sort of
simple.
fluid versus static.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good kind of general distinction here. So once you print words on a page, they're on the page, and in order to change those, you have to go back into whatever program it was, make changes there, and then reprint them. I can't make changes to that printed page once it is out. I have to, the only changes I could make would be to like burn it. Like there's nothing else that can be done at that point. But in a digital environment, let's say I need to update one of the pages on my website. I don't have to go and scrap that page. I just go in and I edit it. It's fluid. It's able to be manipulated again and reused again and repurposed again, right? So the usefulness of that information is greater because it lives, versus print, like it becomes a snapshot of that information, a snapshot of time, and is not fluid and able to grow, change, evolve, remix, repurpose. Think about the olden days when people would have textbooks that they would read and they would highlight that information, and then they would probably go back and look at the information that they highlighted and maybe make their own notes so that they could then collect the important points like in their notebook. So when they were studying, they could study like these smaller chunks of all of the things that they thought were important. Like, what would we do now?
Right.
We would go to our digital textbooks, we would copy and paste, right? Like, I wouldn't have to get the highlighter out. I would simply select that text and then post it in Evernote or somewhere where I was trying to collect that information. And it's just, they're totally different mediums, and there's a different usefulness and potential with the information in those mediums. The web is a non-linear experience where print traditionally is a more linear experience. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule here. There's no really hard definitive. Let's just say there's always exceptions to the rule, and then I'll show you. I'll point those out when I can. So what does this mean? Non-linear versus linear. In your experience of it.
The print is all have like invisible line,
Mm-hmm.
but the web expects like for title things, like it was like wavy, it have some movement.
Okay,
It
so
doesn't have any limit for information things like.
yeah, you're right. It doesn't have any limit in kind of the display or application of the information there. And I would say that speaks a little bit more to the digital versus analog aspect of it. But again, like some of these things are going to overlap. Like we're really just kind of making distinctions between these two environments. So, you might see some of these areas that kind of bleed into each other. But what I'm hinting at here is with a linear progression through printed content, you start off in chapter 1, and then you go to chapter 2, and then you go to chapter 3. When you come to a web page, there's no prescribed path for you. Nobody says you have to go to the home page first, and then you go to the services page, and then you go to the home page. That bleeds into the next one, which is the experience that you have online is a user-driven experience. You decide based upon the goal that you have, the task that you want to complete, or whatever information that you're looking for. You are choosing how you interact, which is why user experience is so important, because the user is in charge and can just choose to go elsewhere instead of staying on your site. Versus print, it's more of an author-driven experience, which means like the author has written it in such a way that they want you to follow this progression. So here's an example of an exception to that rule, and that could be the encyclopedia. The encyclopedia, you just want to jump and look for Einstein. You don't have to read from A to E in order to get there and find that information useful. Or maybe like an instructional manual. Like I don't need to, if I'm reading stereo instructions, I just go to the index, figure out, okay, how do I do this one thing I want to do, and then jump to that page. So again, always going to be exceptions, but like if we're talking it sort of blanketly. Web is a user-driven experience where print is an author-driven one. The web is more active in terms of our engagement with it versus print. It's more given to us, and we just absorb and take it how it comes. We don't make it our own experience. How many of you? And this is my personal experience. I, at a certain point of time in the night, have to shut my laptop, or else I won't go to sleep, because the interaction with what I'm doing is keeping me awake in a way that won't happen with print media. The fastest way to put me to sleep is give me a book for 5 minutes, and I'm just like out. But if you put a laptop on my lap, and I'm surfing or doing different things, my brain is constantly on. I'm making choices about where to spend my time, what I'm going to look at, instead of just being like, okay, just give me what you've got, and I'll just read whatever's on the next page, and I'll read whatever's on the next page. I become more relaxed in that state. The web, in terms of content, tends to be a bit more casual in its language and in its messaging, right? So the web is a great. It has democratized access to information in a major way, right? So things that, at one time were absolutely inaccessible for most people are available to all for free in many cases. We could all take a Stanford class right now if we wanted to for free online. That would have been just unheard of in the past, especially when you think about the Renaissance period, where if you had books, it meant you were rich.
Yes.
That type of information, first of all, you had to have an education to be able to read it, and then if you had the books, it meant that you were rich. But now, everybody has access to basically the grand sum total of human knowledge that we have collected here and are sharing on the web. Which is a pretty neat kind of thing. And so because everybody has access to it, you can think about the disparity between, let's just say, an inner city, youth who maybe doesn't have the best education, maybe disadvantaged, accessing, a piece of information online versus a Harvard graduate. Both people are accessing that information, but if that information isn't developed in such a way that it speaks to a broader audience, then you're going to limit the number of people who can find your information useful, right? And so, because education is still, and the quality of the education that you receive is not uniform across the board, and that we're all, coming out at the same level. Businesses are incentivized to make sure that the content that they share can be absorbed and enjoyed by somebody who has a high school diploma and someone who has a master's degree from, Harvard or whatever the case may be. So there is more of a casual tone and approach to the content that's shared there because they're trying to appeal to a wide audience of users, right? Where print tends to be more of a formal language. To it. Like when you're reading a book, it becomes more flowery, more descriptive, generally speaking to a more advanced reading level. The web is the future, obviously, but I think that print is also the future because when you see how people are learning and in the way that education is changing, like our attention spans, especially for things that we're doing in a digital environment, are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. But that doesn't mean that what we need to learn is any less intense or less involved. It just means our capacity to learn it in this environment is changing. And so I do believe that there will always be that demand for the immersive experience where you can feel calmed and
You can feel the
comforted and feel the book in your hand and feel like you can give yourself over to hours of this type of either entertainment or education or engagement versus kind of like the manic jumping from page to page, task to task. I'm on Facebook, I'm tweeting, I'm doing all of these things while I'm doing my homework kind of experience. So I share this with you just to kind of have it as context for thinking about what you're creating for the web in a different way, right? It is a different medium. People are accessing the information and interacting with it in a different sort of way. And so I shared with you some of my favorite tips and tricks, but here are just a few best practices for developing content where a less is more kind of capacity. Basically, embracing the medium, the interactive medium, everything we just talked about, the digital, the user-driven, the casual language, just like the capabilities with this environment to share rich, engaging text, images, different types of media, right? So if we're embracing this medium, we need to be concise with the content and with the wording and avoiding the dense paragraph text, breaking it up, having certain design and formatting considerations for how we know people scan this information for what it is that they want to do. We want to provide intuitive navigation systems whereby we are naming and calling things what someone would assume that thing would be called, right? So I've seen students in the past hide the locations for the Real Deal Taco business under a page that says contact us, right? And it might not be intuitive for someone to think that the location, a traveling location, would be under contact. I've seen people label the menu as services, and it might not be intuitive for someone to think like, oh, I wonder if they have, Baja Fish Tacos, to look under services for that information. Providing intuitive navigation also speaks to that idea of meaningfully titling your links and not just putting a URL out there or something that says click here, but rather something that is descriptive of the content that the person is going to find there. So, and I thought about this today because we are always having the opportunity to practice these skills, whether or not we're making a website for someone, or we're posting something in an FSO, or we're posting something on our blog, or we're posting something on Facebook or any of these other places. When I was sending Haley the link for this, and I'm writing in the FSO, chat area that says something like, you can register here for, the GoToMeeting session. Like, I have the option to just paste the URL in there for her. I have the option to say, click here to register, which wouldn't necessarily be the best. Or I could say, here is the registration link, and maybe make registration link the actual link. These are all opportunities for you to continually apply these best practices, not just in this scenario, but in many areas of what you're doing every day. The web, because it's a digital environment, can support very rich multimedia resources. The web is highly visual, and video is the number one medium that people want to see. It's the first thing that people are trying to interact with, especially in a learning field, that people would much rather have a video than have to read anything. And then lastly, because the web is so connected to everything in every way, link to additional info as needed, and don't feel like you need to reinvent or recreate something that is more credibly presented elsewhere. So for example, let's say Real Deal Tacos is very big on organic produce or sustainable farming or fishing practices or whatever. They could do a short blurb about the importance of that in whatever it is area that they want to promote it, but they don't have to regurgitate everything that like the California Organic Commission says it even better. Just say, for more information on the value of organic produce or where we get our produce, check out the California Organic Farm Association or whatever the case may be. And again, so like that, what that does is it like provides value for your visitor, like you're giving them the opportunity to go get more information, but you're not inundating them with potential stuff that they're not there on a mission to get. You're not hiding something from Real Deal Tacos amongst other content that they weren't specifically looking for in the first place. You are supporting them on their mission by weeding out all of that other stuff. All right. So looking ahead to what we have coming up this week, you have a Writing for the Web assignment, which takes a kind of a similar form to what we saw last week early on, which is a very short lynda.com, but it's one of my favorite ones. It's just a real thinker and something that has a lot of concepts and techniques that you can apply beyond this class, certainly, and beyond this assignment. I'm asking you to create 2 pieces of content for your Real Deal Taco scenario. So take what you learn from this and create 2 pieces of content. It's up to you, whatever it is that you want to create within the guidelines of what it says in that assignment. Also up for your analysis this week, you're going to be looking at various content management systems. This is where I ask you guys to go ahead and select the content management system that you want to use to build your site. You may already know, which is great, but here I ask you to get in there, choose a template, upload a logo to the header, mock up a page, and put some information in the footer. I do this to force your hand in getting started early with building the site over the weekend, because what I hear from students is that, man, it really took me more time to learn Wix than I thought. Man, I wish that I would have spent more time exploring Squarespace prior to having to build this site over the weekend. This is how I force you into doing that. And then also it gives you the opportunity to get in there, like, tweak the dials a little bit, see if you know how to do what you need to do, and ask any questions with enough lead time to be able to get the answers that you need to be successful in building your site. And then last up on Sunday, you've got a site due. Your Real Deal Taco site is due on Sunday. You will be required to produce the site that you proposed this week. Please note that I know that this is likely the first site many of you have created, and that the idea is that this is a learning experience. That being said, I've shared a lot of different kinds of concepts and techniques and ideas with you and best practices. I'd like to see that implemented in whatever it is here that you create. Rest assured, when you turn in what you turn in, I will provide you with very detailed feedback about your submission, and you'll have the opportunity to revise this again in week 4 to get it closer to the point that you would want to include this in your portfolio as an example of strategic web design. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have any questions kind of about that moving forward?
How's WordPress when it comes to CMS?
WordPress is it's arguably one of the most popular ones. They very much separate the presentation layer, which is how things look, from the content layer, which is where you're inputting text and images. So it's kind of like you go to the backside, you put in text and images, you hit post or preview, and then you see what it looks like on the page. There are more visual editors like Weebly and Wix and Squarespace that kind of merge that experience a little bit more. WordPress is fantastic as far as their free tools go. The design kind of features and are limited. Like when you pick a template, there's only so many things that they're going to allow you to tweak and change structurally in terms of the fonts or layout. So in essence, then you would spend your time, if you were under those constraints, you would spend more time developing the content instead of trying to develop the template, right? So spend more time making your content look great because your hands are going to be tied a little bit as far as the template that you choose. Anything else there? All right, so just kind of, I told you guys I was going to share a couple of tools, and Haley, I'm going to share, this with you, and these are supplemental things that you can do to prepare yourself for this, but there's not a requirement that you have to do these things as homework or for any type of credit. So as we move forward, again, we're in the design and development phase for this fictitious client, the Real Deal Tacos. And so if we're thinking about how would this work in a real world scenario, if this was real, all right, your client has said, yes, I will accept your proposal, and like, what's next? Well, what you would do is then you would likely create, so here we are, we've gone through researching and the proposal, we're kind of in the design and development phase right now, where we're looking at content and mock-ups and things like that. This slide is out of order, but these are the content management systems that most people choose from: WordPress, Blogger, Tumblr, Wix, Weebly, and Squarespace. And so for the content management system analysis, you will choose one of these to build your site on. But this is what I wanted to talk about, was that you would create a mood board as a design document, and it's kind of like a conversation between you and your client to say, hey, are we on the same page? It's the look and feel of what you have proposed. So in this, you would include branding elements. So they've given you a logo and they've given you some colors. Yes, okay, but like, you don't just make a collage with things they've already given you. You say, okay, I understand the look and feel of these assets that you've given me, and I want to show you how I plan to extend your brand online through colors, textures, fonts, icons, and images, right? And so then you would create this supplemental thing that highlighted, sure, their logo and maybe some colors that they've given you, but like, okay, based upon the look and the feel and what they want to communicate, how are you reflecting back different choices that are going to mirror that? Let me plug in my laptop really quick, because I don't have a plug. Does anybody have their plug? Sorry, I'm thinking about where this plug is. Oh, it's in another bag. Thanks, guys.
There is a plug right behind that board.
Yeah.
I think there's one right here. All right. Perfect. Okay. So I want to show you an example of one that a student created for a previous web project. So before there was Real Deal Tacos, there was Pero Mi Pero, which was a grooming and boarding facility out of just outside of Austin, Texas. And this was a fictitious scenario that existed before Real Deal Tacos. I can only hang with the same fictitious scenario for so long because you can imagine if I get 25 different Real Deal Taco sites every month, my my interest in that scenario only can last so long. But so Pero Mi Pero existed before that, and this was a mood board for that. So this was the logo, and everything that you see besides the logo was how that student or that web strategist intended to kind of characterize the look, feel, design, and aesthetic. So we see her font choices here. We see some kind of playful icons and graphics, some images, different textures or wallpapers, things that can add dimension to the page, and different colors. So the only thing that was given to the student was the logo, and everything that they pulled from there was their own extension of the brand and how that can be communicated through various elements on a web page. So like, what might this look like for a Real Deal Taco scenario? Okay, you've got the logo, but like, what kind of images might you use for such a site?
Mostly food.
Mostly food? Okay. Any other takes on that?
I think also not necessarily as the main picture, but maybe like to give it a beach feel,
Okay.
because that's what they're going for. Maybe like a sunset.
Okay, a
Or
beach
like
feel or a
water.
sunset or water. Cool. There's a point that begs to be made here, and that is that where does the Real Deal Taco scenario take place?
San Diego.
San Diego. Okay, who's been to San Diego? Right, Stephanie has. What does the beach look like in San Diego?
White sand, ocean. It's actually pretty busy too.
Okay, but it's a rocky coast. It's the
Yeah.
Pacific Ocean. So if I were to like have a picture that looked like a Corona ad, would that match the scenario? No, it wouldn't, because the California coast is violent in most places, right? The surf is intense.
Yeah.
The waves are crashing. It's gorgeous and turbulent and rocky, right? But it is not like the white sand, like steel drum area of the Caribbean, right? It's not these gentle waves lapping upon like sugary white sands. It's like very intense, very intense, right? So if we're choosing relevant imagery that says, I understand that, this is the scenario, you're not going to choose the Corona scene. You're going to choose something that's a bit more relevant to the scenario at hand. Like, what type of textures? Rough textures. Okay.
There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
of intimacy.
Yeah, there's a lot of lights. San Diego's a very beautiful place. So like, these are the things like, you're thinking now strategically about, okay, I'm trying to communicate something about this brand, and I'm choosing different assets to support that. But I want to make sure that the assets that I use are on point with, the look and the feel and the vibe and what that particular entity wants to communicate. For sure. All right. Because like the Real Deal Taco site is going to have a different vibe than, say, an elegant seafood restaurant on a cliffside restaurant or cliffside, right? Like, and Real Deal Tacos is going to have a different vibe than, say, a medical office downtown. And so, like, of course, your content, the words and things like that are going to differentiate you in a medical office. But also the whole aesthetic is going to differentiate these things. Another activity that you could do is to engage in creating a style guide. A style guide is, for the web, is basically a determination of what different elements will look like consistently from page to page. Your page titles, your headings, your fonts, your visual treatments of different things need to be consistent from page to page to page. Your headings on the home page should look the same as your headings on the About page. The way that you style images, whether you put a drop shadow or you put a stroke around it or you do neither or all your images come in the form of a circle, should be kind of consistently applied throughout, because you are giving a visual aesthetic that allows a seamless experience from page to page. The last thing that you would want is to feel like when you went from one page to the next that you're on a totally different website, because then you've just given me this major disruption in my user experience. I want a seamless experience from page to page. Nothing that like causes me to go, wait a second, why is this so incredibly different? And so like style guides can be simple, and they can even be more elaborate depending upon the choices that you have available to you in your particular content management system. Like WordPress kind of keeps you handcuffed a little bit more. Wix is the one that offers the most variability, right? So that can be cool, but it also can be really dangerous, because I see students like try to get real creative with their designs, but what they end up being is real and consistent with their design, right? Squarespace is like WordPress, that it kind of locks you into good design. There are only certain elements that you can change, and then you apply those elements on the page, and so that style is set. So this is what the style guide for my individual personal website looks like. So a heading 1 on my site looks the same whichever page you're in, right? And so like this is what it goes by. So I can see how these styles interplay, that there's a hierarchy in terms of the design and the visual dominance of things on the page, and it is applied consistently throughout. That is something that you want to achieve on these sites in terms of the design that you are doing. Your content management system activity on Thursday, when you're deciding which one you want to choose, will function as a mock-up activity. You are mocking up how one page is going to look with a header, a footer, and your navigation, and that is also a design phase activity, right? Because theoretically, I've given you this mood board client, you've said yes, you're on point with my brand. I've developed a style guide that's consistent with that. Your client says yes, that's awesome. Okay, now I'm going to make you a prototype. A prototype is a single page, basically, that it's like, okay, like I've done all of these things that have been on point, so now here's a page and this is how this works. And you do one page to start with instead of the entire site, because if at that point the client's like, no, actually, you haven't wasted your time building the entire thing out. It's kind of like you are getting these little approvals all along the way to make sure that everybody is in alignment and that expectations are aligned for what this is going to look like and how it's going to work. All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Nope.
All right. Haley, do you have any questions about that? All right, so this is going to then close out our lecture for week 2 and content development strategies for building out your website. I appreciate you guys listening, and I'm going to get this archive posted in our class messaging feeds.